final speaker. Thanks for everyone hanging in here. Doing great. So Connie Regan-Blake, pleasure to have here. She, not to put any pressure on her, but she is a professional storyteller. She's been doing this for how many years now?
42 years.
42 years.
That's why she's going last.
That's right. Katie was like, I don't want to go after Connie.
But I got notes. I'm going notes because I'm going after you guys.
Yes. And Connie is a pleasure. I did have the opportunity to attend one of her workshops on storytelling. It was a day long. My mother came, Dawn came. I took it personally just to get a little bit more comfortable being up in front of people. I tend to, unless I'm like up leading a class, I really don't like to be up in front of groups. And so I did it to just find a little bit of cues on how to find a little bit more comfort in that. And the best thing that I took from hers, my brain just went blank, but the idea we had feedback afterwards, appreciations, right? We had feedback afterwards, and we had partners that we did some little sharing with, and we had to give and take appreciations. And when someone gave you an appreciation, like a compliment, what you did well, you weren't allowed to say anything back. Just, thank you.
Drink it in.
Drink it in. And I think that was a great thing to in general, learn. You hear it all the time whenever someone has something positive to say. We always want to downplay ourselves. Thanks, but. I hear that all the time. And I think that as a coaching staff, we've done a good job of starting to call ourselves and other people out on that, to just take in the compliments. It's okay. We're kind of raised to be humble sometimes, at least in my upbringing, but then we get so much focus that we kind of lose some of that positivity. So Connie is here today. She also, I mentioned her storytelling workshops, and her website is storywindow.com. So you can check out, she has performances in the area as well. So pleasure to have Connie with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yay. And I want to say how amazing everyone has done. I've loved it. Katie and Jana and Rick. Gosh, it's a lot of food for thought, a lot going on in my heart and head and body right now. Oh, the stories we tell ourselves. You know, I do make my living as a storyteller, traveling around, and often people will ask me what kinds of stories I tell. Well, I tell all kinds. I tell Appalachian mountain stories that come from this area around here. I tell my own true life adventure stories. I tell really scary, intense ghost stories. Some of my stories are poignant, some are funny. But when I look at all the different types of stories that I tell, there's one element that is present in all of those stories, and that is a sense of truth. That's what I'm looking for. If I'm looking to write a story, create a story, find a traditional story, I'm always looking for something that holds truth. Now the paradox is that for myself, I'm often telling myself stories that are false. From my experience, I have really come to know that many of us tell ourselves stories that are untrue. And these stories can really limit who we are. We allow them to kind of define our limitations and define often the way that we literally walk in the world. And so some of the stories we've been telling ourselves all our lives, others just kind of come up in the moment. But often they're false. So I'm going to tell you a story, one of my untrue stories. Since I was a child, I had been telling myself that I was not athletic, that I was not physical, and that I was not strong. I never played sports in school. Actually, back when I was in school, that really wasn't an option much for girls and women. And most of my life, I have struggled with being overweight. At one point, I actually weighed close to 190 pounds. And I would kind of go up and down with that. But countless times, I would declare, I am going to lose weight. Actually, I wouldn't necessarily declare that out loud to other people, but I would say it to myself, and along with that, I would say, I better do some exercise. So I would find myself going out and buying some piece of equipment, maybe a a treadmill or stretchy bands. Maybe it was only a video. Or I would sign up for a class. And I would be diligent. I'd be on that treadmill every single day for a week. Maybe for a month. But then something would happen. My knee would start hurting, or I'd be traveling and it was just too much to bother with, or I'd just kind of lose interest and I would stop. And then I would go months or years, and then I would declare, I need to lose weight. I better exercise some. And all of that same cycle would start again. My story was that I was not physical. I was not athletic. I was not strong. And really, my life kind of reflected that. Now, if I was talking about spiritually or mentally or emotionally strong, yes. But my body, no. And I really bought into that story. Being strong belonged in someone else's story. Then 4 years ago, everything changed. Actually, my 4th year anniversary was on Sunday, December 29th. So in December, 4 years ago, my husband, Phil, poet and extraordinaire, my husband, Phil, he had, as a Christmas gift, he asked me, would I like to have 10 sessions with Corey? And I said, yes. Now, I need to tell you another fact about me, especially in the area of exercise. I was shocked that I said yes, kind of instantaneously. My old habit would have been to go away and think about it. I'd make a list, pros and cons. I really should. I would probably lose weight. It'd probably be good for me. I'd probably have more energy. And on the other side, but I don't want to do that. I'd probably injure myself. I don't have time for it. I'm not physical. I'm not strong. And I would weigh these back and forth. And while I was doing that, I'd be hoping that Phil would have forgotten that he had offered me this gift. But for some reason, a gift of grace is the way that I look at it. I just flat out said yes. I didn't know it at the time, but this was the start of a very important new story for me. Now, Phil has always been in good shape. We've been together for almost 33 years now, and when I met him, he was the racquetball champion of North Carolina. He plays golf, he's ridden his bike up to Craggy Gardens, and it's just a part of him. He was the athlete. He was the strong one in our family. And it was in 2009 that Phil read an article about CrossFit, and he thought he'd give it a try. Well, after his first class, he came home dragging. He was practically pulling, and he was already in good shape, pulling himself up the stairs. But he had this great big old smile on his face. And for 2 weeks, I kept hearing about these grueling workouts with this smile on his face. And he said, Connie, you ought to come down and watch a class. Well, I'm very supportive of Phil, and I instantly said, sure. I remember a cold day. It was down on Cox Avenue, this tiny little black box of a place. It was so small that I had to walk up a few steps and stand in the loft to watch this class. Becca was there, and Seth and Jana, but what I remember most is this grunting and groaning, and people were sweating and yelling and looking out over this sea of sweat. I thought to myself, I would never do this. I sure am happy for Phil, but I would never do this. Well, it was a few days later that Phil said, you want a gift and work out with Corey? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I've been coming to CrossFit twice a week now since then, on Mondays and Thursdays. And just a few days ago, I committed to 3 days a week. I'm upping it here for myself. And when I'm out traveling, I try to find CrossFits where I am. And I've Phil and I went to one down in Australia and one in New Zealand. I really recommend that out in Boulder, up in around Chicago area. If there's no CrossFit box I can get to, I'm at the hotel and going up and down the steps, on that fire escape steps, or I'm in the room doing plank burpees. And I'm really reshaping myself, both internally and externally. And as I'm doing that, I'm reshaping the story that I tell about myself and my experience in life. You know, if I'm walking up to a stage and it's 1.5 feet or 2 feet tall, I just put my foot up and I step up onto it. All these farmer carries, I'm now able to kind of lift my suitcase pretty much easily. Not too long ago, Phil and I did a hike up Beerwalla Mountain. I didn't have to stop once to catch my breath or to rest. Just going right up there. I have joined the ranks of those physically fit. But, thank you. But you know, I found that even as we root out these false stories that we're telling ourselves, we also have to contend with all the stories that our culture tells us. All the things that we take for true. A big one of those is that as we age, our bodies are going to deteriorate. Now you can get out and walk, we hear, or maybe your diet can be a little bit better. You can take some drugs, some kind of prescription drugs, and you know, maybe you'll get through it. But basically the bottom line is, well, you're just going to be going downhill, and that's just the way it is. That is an untrue story. And we hear it everywhere. Everywhere we turn. Often it's from family and friends. And it's certainly in the media. That story is reinforced over and over again. That's what we hear. Now, most people in the Western world believe that story. So it is so reinforcing for us. But, and I don't deny that our bodies do change as we age. You know, a flower does not stay as a bud. It blossoms, it has color, and eventually it dies. And the same is true of our bodies. But we have this, I know this as an absolute fact, we have this enormous potential that a lot of our older people are not tapping into because they believe this other story as truth. And then it's kind of reflected in their lives, and then they see more of it, and then it's reflected in their lives, and that's the way that they walk through life. I really know from my own experience that that is a false story. But as we're trying to kind of adjust to that story, we're going upstream. We're really going against the current. And that's one of the many things about CrossFit and the community that gathers here is that we're so encouraging. We're encouraging to each other to go against that current. And we got the strength to go against that current. And it can be daunting to do that, though, I think. But the rewards are really immeasurable. Actually, with CrossFit, they are measurable. So, especially with Corey's new machine, we can measure everything, so that helps too. So, but now there are aspects of my story that I'm still really working on, aspects that have been negative in my life. I've realized that I have had a real resistance to change. About 3 years ago, Corey announced to us silver fitters that he was going to change the way he was doing things, that instead of classes, we were going to go to individual workouts. I cried for 3 days. And I realized later it was because I was deeply scared that everything I'd been doing would go away in a puff of smoke if I made a change. So now I'm still dealing with that. You know, when I've been aware though now and watching it, but I can see when there's a change or something's coming, it's like, oh, wait a minute, you know. And then I have to go back in and realize, oh, that's okay. Other parts of my life I can change, but it's this place that for 60-something years I told myself I was not strong and not physical. So when something starts, some part of the ego thinks that, oh, that's going to be jeopardized, something's going to change, you might, might just go right back to those old habits. But I'm really shifting that story as well. And today I am here to tell you I'll be 67 in about 20 days. And I am the strongest, I'm the most fit that I've ever been in my life. I'd worked my way up to a size 16, 18. Now I'm a size 10. I like that. I'm a 10. And I find it really helpful too to remember that this is not a new part of me that somehow got grafted on to this body. This is who I've always been. This part of me has just been inside me, waiting for me to change that story, waiting for me to welcome it out. So I feel like, the timing is just perfect on it, because this is right when it could flower. So I'm investigating, though, the other limitations, the other stories that I find myself telling myself in other areas. So I'd like to kind of invite you to also consider what untrue stories you might be telling yourself. Now, most of you here, maybe you are really comfortable with being physical. Maybe you've been pretty much fit your whole life, maybe a few in and out cycles, but you basically think of yourself as strong. But what is it that you're telling yourself that you're not so good at? Maybe it's being creative. Maybe, oh, my sister got all the creative genes and I never have been creative. Or maybe it's, yeah, I'm just not good at those long-term relationships. Or maybe it's public speaking. Right now you might be thinking, I would never do that. But watch out. Because you just really don't know. There's a chance that there is this possible untrue story, that one that has been holding you back in some way, has been putting limitations. Maybe today, this very day today, you'll start changing that story so the truth of who you really are can start emerging. I want to say that I am absolutely delighted to be here. I was tickled when Shauna asked me to do this, and I want to thank Phil for that gift 4 years ago. I want to thank Corey and Shauna and every single coach here. Every single person that comes to CrossFit or supports someone else that comes to CrossFit or SilverFit. All of you have been integral to me changing my story. I've been made, I feel so welcomed, I'm encouraged and supported. It really has been a life-changing gift that I have given myself. And all of you have helped me recognize that. And you've helped me bring it to a fullness that 5 years ago or 4 years ago in 1 month, I would have thought was unimaginable. I'm proud to say I have a new story. I am fit and I am strong. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And some of y'all know that Shauna posted it on the website. I'm real involved with a nonprofit called Bead for Life. It's working with women in southern Uganda making beads out of paper. So all of the jewelry over there that you see is literally made out of recycled paper. I'm a volunteer with that organization. I went over to Uganda a number of years ago to listen to the stories of the women there, women coming out of extreme poverty, most of them with AIDS, that now have extraordinary lives that they might not have been able to imagine a few years ago. Makes a huge impact. I love everything about Bead for Life, the way that they listen, the way that they operate in the world. And all this stuff over here is between $4 and $30 is the most expensive. I'm wearing some so you can see. Makes great gifts if you know of anyone having a birthday in the next year. A good gift. And you get a little card saying all about Bead for Life. And I'm really grateful to Randy and Shauna and Corey for letting me have that here today. So if you want to take a look at it, they've got a great website if you just want to take a little note about it, and I actually even have one of those things on my phone from Square where I can do a credit card. So if you didn't bring cash, but you got a credit card, it goes straight to Bead for Life, and I can tell you more about that as well. Thank you all for all you do for me. Thanks. Thank you.